we were having discussions about this phenomenon where these guys would have a wife or a girlfriend or maybe even a girl that they were trying to sort of get with, right? They were making their efforts to sarge the girl, right? And she seemed preoccupied. Like they couldn't sort of make any headway with the girl because she was too hung up on a previous boyfriend. And that was the earliest instance of noticing this phenomenon, which is now called the alpha widows phenomenon or dynamic, whatever you want to call it. And guys were comparing notes and saying, she's too hung up on her ex, right? I don't want to be the rebound guy. That was another one. Then what was happening is there were guys who were already in long-term relationships, LTRs, and they were noticing a very similar phenomenon in that they caught their girlfriend or they caught their wife talking to an old boyfriend, or she just can't get over her ex. And that sort of, it triggered something in me, right? I was like, okay, well, why is this a commonality? And it was like across the board. It didn't matter if you were married, you had a girlfriend, you were single and you're trying to get with a girl. There was always this dynamic of this sort of the one that got away.
What's going on, guys? This is Eddie, the African Red Pill. Welcome to the video. In today's video, what are we talking about? In today's video, we're talking about an alpha widow. What is an alpha widow? Let's get into the video.
Concepts that the way that men understand them and the way that we need to understand them are different, because they need to understand them from a practical perspective, and we need to understand them from a, okay, this exists, what do we do about it perspective. So alpha widowhood is one of those. And I guess I'd like to start by just giving you guys the standard, this is in our dictionary, this is in the Red Pill dictionary definition of the concept. Bear with me, I'm going to read it. So an alpha widow is a woman, typically but not necessarily post-wall, who's been abandoned by an alpha male. No matter how great her new man is, she will perceive him as failing to meet the standards of the alpha she was previously associated with. Due to hypergamy, a woman cannot date backwards. Once she gets, say, a male 8, she cannot date below a male 8 and be happy with him. If she does, she's just using said man for resources, beta bucks, and she doesn't really love him. Essentially, a damaged woman accustomed to a tier of man she can no longer attract.
So that lady has described what an alpha widow is. But do you know where the alpha widow terminology comes from? The alpha widow terminology comes from Rollo Tomasi, the godfather of the Red Pill himself. What's his take about the alpha widow? Check him out.
But it was here in 2012 that I came up with the idea of, the terminology anyways, of alpha widow. So I have to explain exactly what the alpha widow is. Alpha widow is something that a lot of guys had been talking about back, gosh, even before I was writing about this. We were having discussions about this. We were having discussions about this phenomenon where these guys would have a wife or a girlfriend or maybe even a girl that they were trying to sort of get with, right? They were making their efforts to sarge the girl, right? And she seemed preoccupied. Like they couldn't sort of make any headway with the girl because she was too hung up on a previous boyfriend. And that was the earliest instance of noticing this phenomenon, which is now called the alpha widows phenomenon or dynamic, whatever you want to call it. And it was at that time when we were having these discussions. This was back in the early days of So Suave and alt fast seduction, the gamer era, right? The PUA era. And guys were comparing notes and saying, she's too hung up on her ex, right? I don't want to be the rebound guy. That was another one. Then what was happening is there were guys who were already in long-term relationships, LTRs, and they were noticing a very similar phenomenon in that they caught their girlfriend or they caught their wife talking to an old boyfriend, or she just can't get over her ex. And that sort of, it triggered something in me, right? I was like, okay, well, why is this a commonality? And it was like across the board. It didn't matter if you were married, you had a girlfriend, you were single and you're trying to get with a girl. There was always this dynamic of this sort of the one that got away. And it was at this time, and I swear this is God honest truth. It was right about this time that Katy Perry had come out with that song called "The One That Got Away." You can go look that up on YouTube. I've also linked it. I'll link it in another essay here too. I actually wrote an essay called "The One That Got Away," and that's kind of what developed into what would become the alpha widows dynamic that we now kind of just take for granted. It's like one of these red pill. I'll say truisms, right? Whatever. It's like a red pill maxim. Let's just call it that. And it's the idea that women get hung up on a previous alpha or a previous boyfriend, and they just can't get over that guy. And there's a lot more to it than just, oh, she got with that guy, she had sex with that guy, and she can't get over the fact that he was the best that she ever had. That's definitely part of it, part of the alpha widows dynamic, but there's so much more that goes along with that, okay? So I have to remember what the term really implies. So we're looking at the guy who was the apex. He was the guy who answered the question, is he the best I can do? Whether it's true or it's not is irrelevant. It's the perception that it is true. It's the perception that the guy that she was her boyfriend in college, that she couldn't lock down, or maybe she's even had his kid, that she couldn't lock down that guy, and he becomes the benchmark. He's the metric by which she measures all other guys past that. Now, Chris Rock actually had a bit, or a comedy bit about this, and he was talking about how women cannot go back. They cannot go backwards in lifestyle, and men cannot go backwards in sex. So if a woman gets with a guy and he's rich and he provides for her and he's got a house and he's got this kind of car, the next boyfriend that she has that's not that guy has to provide, the minimum has to be that. That sets the benchmark for the next guy. Now, that's true, but again, we're talking early Chris Rock before he's divorced, right? And we're also looking at only one side of hypergamy, because hypergamy plays a huge part in the alpha widow dynamic. This is something that a lot of guys who are like mouthing off about this, this dynamic right now really fail to grasp. It's much easier to throw it out there as sort of this red meat, right? It's indignation. Well, all women are like that. Black pill guys, doom pill guys, whatever pill, incel guys, whatever you want to call it, that demographic loves the alpha widow dynamic, because it only proves a point. It's like proof of concept. It's like if I get with a woman and I'm not as good as the next guy, or she's bigger, better deal, right? If she finds a guy that's better than me, she's going to go with that guy, and then they can't win coming or going. So if he gets with a guy and she can't find somebody that will in the future that's better than he is, well, she had somebody in her past that was. She had the alpha widow that's in the guy who was the one that got away is in her past. And again, perceptually or in reality makes no difference. It could be real. It could be real. It could be a perception. I'm going to talk about the perception here too in a little bit, because sometimes the fantasy is almost worse than actually her having an ex-boyfriend from her past. That is like she just simply can't get over the guy, and you're not going to help her get over it.
So here is how I understand who an alpha widow is. An alpha widow is somebody who's stuck up or who can't get over their ex-boyfriend. The thing is, every guy they'll date, they always compare him to that guy who was her best. If that guy doesn't match up, then it doesn't erase the memories of that alpha who imprinted that thing of her being an alpha widow. If you as a guy gets to be more than that guy who imprinted her, then you become her alpha. If you end up leaving her, then she becomes an alpha widow to you. If she doesn't end up leaving you, or if the relationship doesn't come to an end, then she'll be in a happy place. So an alpha widow is a woman who's stuck up on her ex. She always compare her ex to every next guy she dates. That's what an alpha widow is.
So you have to remember that it's the idea that that guy is the best quality that there is. And I'll get back to things. So guys can't go back sexually. And just to finish up the joke here is that guy, if a woman like gives him a Hummer, gives him a blowjob, whatever, then the next girl had better give him a blowjob. And if the other girl gives up the ass, then the next girl better, right? And I think it's kind of silly because a lot of guys will take what they can get, right? And a lot of guys are just simply the 80%ers, and they're just happy to be, getting sex on a regular basis rather than the quality of it after a while. But from the opposite side, from the idea that a woman can't go back in lifestyle, I think to an extent that's true, but I think it's more than that. And I think that Chris Rock overlooks the alpha seed side of hypergamy. And that is when she is in her party years, when she's in her hoe phase between the ages of, say, 18 and 28 years old. That is when a woman goes through what I call the party years right there. So it's not so much about lifestyle and providing a lifestyle and having I think too many guys, particularly when they're beta male guys and they focus on what do women really want? And they've got this idea. It's usually based on transactional sex or a transactional relationship. And it's also based on one side of hypergamy, and that's the beta buck side. And they focus almost exclusively to that because they figure that that's the area in which they can improve the most and they have more control over, as opposed to the alpha seed, alpha F's side, short-term sexuals, which is what we call the sexy sun side, right? The selfish gene side, the Darwinian side where the woman wants to get with that guy. Now, yes, women focus almost primarily on that right now into their 30s, and we're going to discuss that here in just a moment. But remember that while we're moving along here, because too many guys focus on just the alpha side, and to the exclusion of the other. They'll focus on just on alpha, or they'll just on the beta side. You need to look at the whole picture if you want to understand the nature of the game that you're in and what you're dealing with when you're dealing with an alpha widow. Now remember, 5 minutes of alpha trumps 5 years of beta. So if that guy that is from her past, the guy, and it doesn't matter how many lovers she's had in her past. And I know people are going to freak out when I say that. I've done shows where I've explained why it is very important for men to consider women's sexual past in vetting them for a long-term commitment, if that's what you want to do. And the reason for that is, of course, that the more sexual partners that a woman has had, the higher the incidence of divorce, the higher the incidence of marital dissatisfaction, the higher the incidence of infidelity. I've got the stats to prove that. And it's not, heck, half the guys in the manosphere have those same stats. I don't think I'm revealing anything different, but what I'm going to say right now is probably going to shake things up a little bit, okay? It's not about the number of guys she has had so much as it is about the guys in her past that have had the alpha impact on her. So that's the numbers game side of it is not so much the numbers as it is the guys who are included in that number. So if a woman has, say, between 3 and 5 guys in her past, okay, whatever, you can laugh at that all you'd like, but let's just say, for sake of argument, we're going to take round numbers. She's got a low notch count. She's got a low body count. Those numbers, let's say maximum of 5. If one of those 5 guys was the best she could do, it satisfied what's called the hypergamous doubt. And that hypergamous doubt asks one question: is he the best I can do? Could I do better? If that question is answered by one of those 5 guys, that's her alpha widow. It might be even more than that. But the guy who answered that question the best, the guy the best sex she ever had, plus the best emotional impact, and I mean imprinting her for life kind of impact, where she's pining for that guy well into her 30s and maybe even into her 40s. And that's where the fantasization aspect of the alpha widow comes into play. So it's not so much the numbers. Now, obviously, if a woman has 10 guys in her past, or 20, or whatever, triple digits, I don't care, that, of course, broadens the pool of guys who might be the alpha, the most alpha impact. Then along comes you at 30 some odd years old, and you think you're going to play by the rules that no one is playing by, and you get quote unquote blindsided right now by the fact that there was a guy in her past who really rocked her world. And I have to explain this to you because it doesn't even matter how long she was with that guy. if you, and I'm going to suggest that you do this, and this is the only time I will ever suggest you go and look at a Katy Perry video, but go and look at the one that got away and listen to the lyrics and watch the video of this. That is the epitome of an alpha widow. And a lot of guys were saying she was writing that about Russell Brand, or like, oh no, it wasn't Russell Brand. It was one of her boyfriends from her high school where she was going to get married and she was showing off her ring. Look at my ring, blah, 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 blah. And she was still pining for the guy who was in her high school because she wanted to in some way get some kind of like lasting revenge or something like that, right? But she's really pining for that guy. She doesn't really want to get married to this dude. She wanted to get with that guy that got away. Royce, this is a Royce term. 5 minutes of alpha trumps 5 minutes of beta. So bear that in mind. Keep that in mind when you are unplugging from the matrix, when you are going and you're moving from your blue pill conditioning into a red pill awareness. I'm not saying all hope is lost. I'm just saying that those are the facts and you need to consider them. Now,
I understand what Rollo is talking about here. Do you know why I understand? Rollo has been doing this for like 20 plus years now. Nobody in the manosphere, nobody in the red pill community, nobody in the black pill community, nobody in this sphere can match up with Rollo. He works with stats. Statistics don't lie. Feelings don't matter when statistics are present. In short, facts don't care about your feelings. I love Fresh and Fit. I love Andrew Tate. I love Kevin Samuels. May his soul rest in peace. But nobody can lace Rollo Tomas's boots when it comes to this topic. Everybody, Fresh and Fit, Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuels, whoever talks about the red pill plagiarizes or borrows stuff from Rollo Tomas. That's why I love Fresh and Fit, because they give credit where it's due. So I understand where Rollo is coming from with this. So, ladies, when you hear men talking about body count, it's not to shame you. Body count simply means the lesser men you have been with, the lesser the chances of you being an alpha widow. Or even if you are an alpha widow, at least the chances of somebody, your next partner, your next best boyfriend, your next best husband, who will not have to compete with a lot of guys to surpass that one that got away. If you've slept with 100 people, it's going to be very hard for the next guy to compete with all those guys. All those guys you are with. Unlike if you've only been with a small number, meaning that guy can try as much as possible to surpass those guys. That's why body count matters, just like Rollo explained. I think on this topic of alpha widow, I'm going to make it into series because we need to tackle what Rollo was talking about. Rollo usually makes long videos. I can't cover the whole video in one, so I'm gonna have to cover this thing by making it into a series, just like I've done with the war. So the alpha widow is going to turn into a series as well, because Rollo explained it best. Since everybody talks about this, steals, borrows, or whatever you can call it, they get it from Rollo. Yeah, so I'm giving props to him. I love Rollo, and I love almost all the guys in the manosphere. So I'm going to make this into a series as well. Not until I start live streaming. When I start doing long videos, which will be live streams, will I be covering or tackling topics in a one single video. The fact that I'm just doing these 10 to 20 minutes videos, I have to be making them into series. But when I get the best equipment, like I'm working on it, I'm going to start doing live streams so that you can be covering. If you talk about a topic, you cover it in one video, and then you move on to the next one. I totally agree with Rollo when he said that 5 minutes of alpha trumps 5 years or 20 years or whatever years you want of beta. You know why? I'm sure all of you who's watching, you've heard stories of where somebody was married for a long time and then she just had a fling with somebody from the office. That fling led to a divorce. That fling was just for 5 minutes. But that 5 minutes trumped the 5 years of the beta. Why is he wrong? So I agree with every point Rollo gave. The more sexual partners a woman has, the higher the chances of her breaking up with the guy or divorcing that guy, or the higher the chances of conflicts in that relationship or marriage. That's because of how we are wired biologically. As a woman, if you sleep with somebody, you are connecting with them emotionally. You are connecting with them emotionally. When you're having sex with a guy, you release hormones. Those hormones help you to pair bond with the guy you're sleeping with. The more sexual partners you have leads to you exhausting those hormones. And when you stop releasing those hormones, your emotions die. This is where I'm gonna end this video. I'll see you in the next one on Alpha Widow. I'm still on this topic because it has to be talked about. So this is part 1, there'll be part 2, probably even more serious about the Alpha Widow. If you enjoyed this topic, hit like, comment on it, subscribe. We have to grow this channel. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.